Good afternoon. This is Cadet Midshipman Andrew Doe, 3rd class. I was on the USNS Washington Chambers for 4 months for my first period sailing. I am an A-split 3rd classman, and this is my sea strainer video. So, the process of this is just the strainer that separates all of the debris that's coming into the saltwater system from the sea chest. And we're basically just securing this butterfly valve, the suction valve, and the discharge valve, the ISO valves, to cut off the system from flushing into this strainer. Pull it out, clean it, and then put it back into its spot. Now, I would just upload a video of me and potentially my sea partner, Midshipman Bohan, doing this, but this video was filmed a few weeks after the incident that happened on the Matthew Perry. So our first engineer was very hesitant in letting us deal with stuff ourselves. He was insistent that him, the second engineer, and an EU that was working with us do it and not us. So how this video is going to be is it's going to cut to a video of the engine department working on the strainer, or in some cases myself, and then we'll cut back to me explaining what we're doing, because there's no speaking parts in it. Okay, so in that video, you can see my second engineer securing this butterfly valve right here. The reason why we're securing this is because on this end of the system is the rest of the connecting pipe between the high sea chest and the low sea chest. So there still is, this pipe is still connected to one of the sea chests, which is just a straight pipe overboard. And if we crack open this, this strainer without securing this valve or this valve, the ship will flood. Like I said before, the whole Matthew Perry incident. I didn't get a video of this, but you could, while this was happening, my first engineer was taking one of the motor operated valves and slamming it shut as hard as he could, making sure it was secured. And then he pointed at me and he said, "That's not happening on this ship. That is not happening on this ship." So this spot, you do not see me or my sea partner anywhere close to it, just because the engineers wanted to make sure everything was, spot on accurate. It was a perfect seal between these two valves so we could lift out this strainer. Okay, so what you could see in that video was my second engineer and my first engineer venting this thing. So after we secure the suction and the discharge isolation valves for the sea strainer, what you want to do is open this vent valve here to allow any of the pressure to escape. There's going to be a higher pressure of water in the sea strainer than there is in the engine room. It's just going to be atmospheric pressure, but with all the weight of the boat pushing down with the displacement, it's going to be made up with the water wanting to rush inside. It's still going to be extremely pressurized. So we first want to vent this line, have it go down, shoot that water into the bilge, but the water level is still going to be very high up in the strainer, and we don't want it just pouring everywhere. So what you can see my second engineer doing is removing the cap onto this drain line, opening this ball valve here, and having it drain out so the water level here will then go down to the point where we won't splash it all over the place, leading for us to just have a clean removal and then reinsertion of the strainer. Okay, so what you can see in that part of the video is my sea partner, Matthew Bohan, using a pneumatic drill to take off all these bolts that are clamping down the top lid of the sea strainer. So all it is just this nut here is connected to this bolt, and it's just applying tension, using the tension in this bolt to hold down this lid. And all you have to do is just loosen this a bit, use the hinge here to flop the bolt down that way, and then once you do that to all of them, this lid will lift up, so it's just going to look somewhat like this. It's just like a garbage can. And then you just pull the strainer straight out. Okay, so that was the special tool that our first engineer built himself to unscrew the bolts for the lid. What our first engineer did was take a socket that was supposed to fit onto it, and he cut it in half so we had the nut end and the drill end. And what he did from there was he took the drill end of the socket and the nut end of the socket, and he welded it first to a 3/4 inch in diameter coupling here, a 6-inch long pipe here, and another inch in diameter coupling here to give it, just some extension, some length on it. Why he did that is because the socket could not reach properly over the bolts. It would get stopped here. So the only way for that to happen was to cut it off at the point where it goes from being able to hold a bolt into the square hole that the socket portion goes into. So he cut it immediately there and just welded some extensions onto it, and that tool we used to, just rip the lid off. So what you can see in that video is us using this chain fall that we have hooked up to a pad eye hanging directly on the overhead above the strainer. We use it to lift the lid up and then just tuck it over. It was just resting on the pipe on the inboard side of the saltwater suction pipe. And then from there, with the lid out of the way, it being over here, we just took the strainer that you can see peeking out, hooked it up to the chain fall, and lifted that immediately out. Took some kicking and shoving because of how tight of a fit it is, just how large it is, but eventually it just came out completely vertically. See in that video were two important things that we did in that process. First thing was the plastic that you can see laid out right underneath the actual strainer. We put that there because since the chain fall wasn't on any type of guide rail for us to just slide it across into a working space for us to clean it out, it was just sitting right on top of its housing. So when we're cleaning it out, technically there's no strainer there. So it just goes from, sea chest straight into all the coolers. And to prevent any of the debris that we are trying to clean out of the strainer in the first place from falling back into the system and getting flushed through something and potentially clogging it, we just lay that plastic down. It's like an extra thing of protection for a few minutes. Then from there you can see our EU, Abel, he was taking a hose and spraying down everything on the inside to get all the seaweed and plastics out of it that we found in there. And after that, we didn't film this, but we took some compressed air from a service air station that was just standing behind me, just sitting behind me, and we went to the other side of the strainer and blew it out forward. So just to clean out as much stuff as possible. Then me and my C partner, Matthew Bohan, we just took a couple of buckets in our hands and we just scooped everything out of the bottom and put it in the bucket and got rid of it. It was probably like a whole Home Depot bucket full of junk that we got out of that system. It's, it didn't look like a lot while it was sitting in there, but it turned into being a lot of stuff that we got rid of. So, what you can see in there is me taking that hydraulic drill and securing the bolts down, but you didn't see the exact pattern that we were going for. Of course, when you're bolting down something that needs to be completely tight and not have any leaks, you need to do the star pattern. So whenever you start with them, we took the chain fall, put the lid back down after we put the strainer back inside, and then we hand tightened all the bolts so they would be even, making sure we didn't damage the O-ring that was underneath the lip right here. What we did was we started with this bolt, cranked that one down, and we didn't go to any of these two. We went to the one immediately across to there. And from there, bolt down this one, go to the one immediately across, place the pressure down as evenly as possible so you aren't pinched down on one side while the other one's propping up and creating a weak point in the seal, having something leak out. And from there, you just keep going across, trying to keep it as even as possible. See, there you figured it out. Messed up a little, cross those two, should be fine. So then we went back around, securing all these again to make sure everything was completely tight because you don't want it to leak, especially this thing. We did a bit of cleanup afterwards. We ran some tests, cracked open the valve to see everything that's going on, filled it back up to make sure that there's pure suction running through. You don't want any air in this. And then after a couple minutes of watching it, waiting for for water to start pouring out of the vent line here that you saw us open earlier, we will then secure that and